Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it. Make your dreams untrue.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay.
Ugh.
Hello and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today we're going to be talking about the trope of found family. I'm Christina Major. I also go by Delphina. I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Sombulus.
I'm Verathane, or Allie. I use the pronouns she, they, and I'm the creator of two webcomics, Geralt and Witchwood.
I'm Megan. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the creator of two webcomics as well. I make My Illustrated Life and Sorcery Shenanigans.
And I am Rennie Jasanis, also Rennie Player One, and I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomic Kate Blast.
Excellent. So today we are talking about found family. So we're just going to go into what that means in case you aren't familiar with the term. Found family or family of choice is a trope that is used in stories. It often involves a group of friends who come together very closely. Either from their journey in the story or some circumstances to be explained beforehand, and they choose each other as their quote unquote family. So, found family is just that family that is found along the way of a character's life through bonding, struggle, adventures, and who they choose to be their supports during all that and who is the loving part of their life. Friends are the family you can choose. So yeah, let's start off with Thane. What draws you personally to found family? How does it show up in your work?
Found family is a theme that I love whenever it shows up because I find something very hopeful inherently about it. Just that the idea of the whole story being focused on a group of people like finding bonds with one another that are so strong that you get the feeling that this could last for the rest of their lives. And I One of the ways that it shows up in a lot of my favorite works is when there's like a character or multiple characters who just in some way they're cynical or misanthropic or they've found a way to like live their life mostly alone, and then over the course of the story they meet other characters who like show them the value of social bonds and they learn to let other people into their life again. And a part of the theme that I've always found really resonates with found family stories is just the idea that no one is too broken to reconnect with other people and form new friendships. And even if it's scary, the results can be worth putting in that effort. In my own work, in my first webcomic, Geralt, I kind of took this theme very literally in a couple of different ways because the protagonist of Geralt, a character named Kieran, he's very surly and like distrustful of other people, and he's found a way to like his job is as a monster hunter, and he just kind of wanders around the woods all by himself being like kind of grumpy. And he gets thrown in with this literal sunshine child named Tico when she gets accidentally shrunk and needs help to get back to her normal size. And initially, they kind of come together purely by accident because she needs help and he's the only one around. And so, begrudgingly, like he slowly agrees to do it. And then, over the course of many adventures together, they form a bond that is explicitly sibling like. Like in the story itself, by the end of it, they refer to one another as siblings. And at another point in the story, Kieran himself was kind of taken in and adopted in all but name. It's a high fantasy story, so it's got that kind of sort of loose setting. It's not like they didn't go through a legal process or whatever, but he was taken in by a woman and raised kind of as her own, which is kind of another. It's a slightly different flavor of it, which might not quite count as found family. It's like adopted family, and the lines there are kind of blurry. but it's definitely shown up a bunch in my own work. I love it.
Yeah, and it's just the grumpy people that happen in your comics, just like
Absolutely.
I just love
I
that.
love a grump.
You love a good grump. I dig it because that is so true that just because you kind of written off the world or maybe the world has written off you doesn't mean that you can't find that later in different ways. I think that's really powerful. Moving on to Meg, what do you think? What kinds of things that do resonate with you when you think of found family? How does it show up in your comic?
I think found family just really resonates with me, especially like Thane was saying, just the whole fact that kind of no matter what you've been through, there's people there that are just willing to stick by you 24/7 forever, no matter what, and help you through that. It's always just really great to have that kind of a support system.
It's so true.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, totally agree with everyone on the grump that kind of becomes the lovable grump. That is also incredibly great. Just kind of the character development from a person who doesn't feel like the world is something that they can be a part of. Like whether they've rejected the world or they feel like the world has rejected them first. And then through meeting their eventual found family, they kind of open up and realize that there is a place for them. In my own work, I don't think I have a true found family trope, but in sorcery shenanigans, it's probably more of a um, true companion kind of trope, which is adjacent to found family. But the main six essentially kind of know each other from college, and they've just like ever since been like super wonderful, great friends, and end up going on this adventure throughout the comic. And it turns out to just kind of be something bigger than themselves. And they stick through that. You know, kind of got each other's backs no matter what, no matter how kind of terrifying the situation becomes, they're ready to overcome it. And I just think, it's a really nice thing to have. And sometimes you do have that yourself in real life with like maybe a small kind of group of good friends.
Yeah, that's such an interesting distinction because friends and like a group of friends might not necessarily be a found family or they're adjacent exactly like you said. It can be really interesting to see when that transition happens between like are you a friend, are you a family, or like yeah, I don't know, there's a lot there I'm gonna have to think
Yeah,
about.
it's a large thing to kind of unpack.
Yeah, I mean, our friends, family, our family friends. Why don't we just call it friends? I don't know. Um, but we could get into that a little. We could get into that a little later. Rennie, tell us about what draws you personally to found family because I know you have a lot of opinions about it and how it shows up in your comics. So please regale us.
Yes, I do. So I freaking love the trope of found family. I tend to look at found family stories from a very queer trans angle because it's very common in real life for there to be some kind of issues between a queer person or a trans person and their families, and then sometimes those relationships can dissipate, which is really sad. But you see that with queer characters a lot too, and the role of that friend relationship that is a tight bond that is like family, I think becomes doubly important in situations where, and it's not necessarily just queer or trans people, but like groups that maybe they've lost their family to some tragic thing or whatever, or that time has passed and their family's moved on, or like I think the role of the found family for a character that has lost their family in some way, be it by choice or accident, I think is really emotionally like it draws me in very emotionally to a story when that's done. I know personally in Kate Blast, it's the relationships are very explicit about these are people who have kind of lost their core family and are relying heavily on each other, to get through what is really trying times, both for themselves, for um, their own experience in the world, and for all the things that are being thrown at them throughout the adventure. Um, and that's not to say that they're always going to get along. Um, like coming up in a lot of the story, two of the characters, Sonia and Ozma, actually have a pretty kind of like not necessarily contentious, but like they step on each other a little bit. But it's like, what family doesn't have at least some dysfunction too? But it's that no matter what the dysfunction is, when things hit the fan, they still have each other's back, and they're still going to be there to bat for them, and throw up a shield or a lightning bolt or whatever. So I think that is, like, to me, what really makes found family different than friendship, where it's the bonds that can survive disagreements and struggles. And I definitely want to echo what Meg and Thame were saying about the jaded characters. I'm a total sucker for that. Kate absolutely falls into that category of where she had her dreams basically crushed by the thing that gave her magical powers.
Yeah, that's an excellent point about just how it specifically relates to queer and trans struggles, and how the fiction of that can really echo some real life complications. But then also, like, there is contention. Not everybody is agreeing and likes each other 100%.
Oh yeah.
And it's just how you build that and how you layer that in a way so it seems like yes, they are fighting right now, but they're going to be there for each other, and you can tell they care about each other in their own ways.
And maybe they're fighting because they care and they see something they
Yeah.
don't like a character resisting helping, or resisting doing their job, or like contributing to the group, or they're contributing to the group in a negative way, um be it by choice or by just in happenstance. So it's just definitely that no found family, like any like main family, no found family is going to be 100%. We're all hunky dory with each other 100% of the time, and everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. Um, there's going to be a little rain and a little clouds every now and then.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I know for Somnolus, for me, I have a character, Sydney. She is a paladin, and really religion was the community and family that made sense for her, and at the beginning of the story she's pulled away from that against her will, and so she didn't really feel like she wasn't fitting in. She didn't really feel like she didn't have a place. She's just been removed from that place, but through that experience she learns what she was missing and what is actually important to her about her values, and all of the characters kind of come together in that journey for her. um, and there's a lot of contention. There's a lot of struggle because she's a bit of a grump too, and she does not like the fact that she's been pulled away from everything she knows and loves. But she does find the value. Eventually, it sinks through like, okay, there were things about my religion that I didn't really question, and I didn't really that made sense at the time, but now that I'm seeing it from the outside, I can see what I was inside, and so the journey is kind of starts to change her in that way. So it's so much fun to play with that. So many
Absolutely.
different levers you can push on that dial, but yeah, so that kind of brings us into like, how do you push the levers? How would you go about constructing a found family story? What are the elements that are important in that construction for you? And we'll throw it back to Thane.
Hmm. Well, the thing that I tend to start with, to be fair, this applies to many more types of stories than found family ones, but it tends to hit the truest when the characters involved are in some way uh, not finding belonging in their life at the beginning of the story, whether they're outcasts from society or alienated from their own family or just alone for some other reason. It doesn't, that's not mandatory, but it tends to make it really resonate, and it feels especially powerful when you can make a character like that reconnect. It's another important thing tends to be that it happens accidentally. I feel like that's one of the things that really distinct it differentiates found family from a story just about friends, because you do choose your friends on purpose, but family, like especially in found family stories, I feel like it's kind of important that they fall into one another's lives by accident at the beginning of it, because a part of what I really enjoy seeing in these stories is that they're kind of showing a character what they didn't realize they needed. Like if you had asked like Kieran in Geralt at the beginning, like, what do you want to do with your life? Like finding a family would not have been on the list. You'd be like, I don't need that. But it's over the course of kind of going really into the story and giving these characters an arc that they realize that that is what they needed all along. And yeah, that's kind of where I'd start.
Yeah, it's so cool too to see. Yeah, you don't know you need it until you get a little taste of it, and then you're like, "Oh, this isn't so bad. Maybe I can tolerate this person in my life," and it just kind of snowballs from there. Like, okay, how much do you tolerate them? Do you want to save their life in this circumstance? How far would you go for them? And seeing them cross line after line as they start walking forward and into the arms of their found family. So good.
It's
It's
so
so
beautiful.
beautiful. I love it. Um, yeah. What about you, Meg? How would you go about constructing it? What are the key elements for you in constructing a found family story?
I have to agree with Thane on the point of it kind of being something that you don't choose to happen. It's never something you actually, quote unquote, find. It's definitely something that just kind of falls into a character's lap. And that I think is what's super important to me. I would almost take it one step further. I love it when that happens to a character and they don't realize it
Ooh,
until it gets to the point where like it just suddenly like dawns on them like I could not live without these people,
Yes.
and if they were in any kind of horrible situation, I would immediately, like, almost to the point I would give up my life to
yeah,
save
that's
them.
the good stuff. I love that too.
That I can no longer picture my life without them kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if like they were gone, I would just like not know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
But it's not
That
necessarily in a romantic way,
no,
because then
but
you get into a
definitely
different category.
yeah, but definitely that kind of platonic. These people are so much a part of my like family that I've found along the way that like I don't know how I would go about in my life if they weren't in it.
It's like removing a pillar.
Yeah. It's like if that pillar's gone, how does the sort of quote unquote house of my life
But
stand up?
yeah.
Like the thing that supports me is gone. What do I
Yeah,
do?
to your point though, like they don't necessarily see the pillar being built. It's just like there when they're like, when did that get there? When was that? How did that become
This is
important
not
in
a
my
beautiful
life?
house.
Yeah. But they always realize that's just always my favorite thing is when they realize it, especially the grumpy ones. They're like, "Oh, I've grown so attached to these people."
Yeah,
Like, "Oh no."
I love it.
Oh no, I like them.
Why?
Yeah. I like people. Ugh, help
They've
me.
ruined my loner cred.
My street cred, it's gone.
I know. Now I can't be edgy and cool and solitary anymore.
Ugh, everybody thinks I'm a big
Oh,
softy
I have to be
now.
Sunderer now.
I know.
That does go into another a sort of trope. I'm not really sure if it's a trope, but like stories that go, it's a theme, I guess. The difference between being alone and being lonely, because you often will find these characters who think they're totally fine being alone until they're shown kind of another way, and there might be a point where they kind of return to their old way of life for a little bit, and they start to realize that actually they don't feel the same anymore.
Mm,
Now
Mm-hmm.
they've seen kind of the value of
Yeah.
connections, and they can't return. They've grown.
they've grown. I guess
This is what we
Oh
call
no,
character
character
arc.
development.
who
How
did
dare I have development?
I've developed as a person. I've become three-dimensional.
Yeah.
I do want to echo on there has to be some kind of chance in the way that they get together. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to always be, oh, these two people randomly bumped into each other at a coffee shop and now they're magical girls together. Um, doesn't have to always be like that. For example,
For a completely random example.
completely random example.
Totally random.
But I think another angle to that I think personally this falls under found family is the webcomic Check Please, where it's Biddy joins a hockey team, and it's chance. It's on like who's on the team. Like you can't like choose who gets to be on the team, so it's in a way it's still chance, but they still find ways to bond together and be there for each other when things are bad and when things are good, and they're basically a family. But it's they all got together because they all happen to play for the same team. Now there's no real accident to that. They all chose to be on the team,
Hmm.
but it's still, I think that's a different way that you could potentially handle something like that, where like there is some kind of structure to how they're getting together, um, but they didn't necessarily choose that. And it's not to say that you can't have some members of the family having known each other from before. Um, there's definitely a lot of stories that do that. Like I think Voltron to some extent, a couple of the characters knew each other and then formed the tight knit family unit. Um, and I know there's like numerous other ones. The Guardians of the Galaxy is another easy one with Groot and Trash Panda.
Trash Panda.
But yeah, so it's like that. I think that's like um, the whole getting the gang together part is so critical, especially for this trope. It's critical for a lot of different ones, but it's especially critical for like you know a unit that basically acts as a family is how they actually even meet and get to that point.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like about Found Family is that there is a unit. The unit of the family is almost its own character. It has its own kind of flavor and dynamic,
Hmm.
that it wouldn't exist without all of the members of it. I think that's important for me in that. And one of the things that I thought of when you were talking about Check Please and just like kind of the established group, one of my favorite anime is One Piece. It has like 1,000 episodes, and I've watched them all, most of them, the good ones.
Bravo.
um, yes.
Yes, pat yourself on the back for that completion.
Oh my
uh,
gosh. I mean, it's still
I'll edit in the
going.
little yay cheer.
It is still going, but the basic plot, if you haven't watched it because you have escaped this fate that I have not. There's a dude who wants to be this very cool pirate captain and assemble a crew. So he finds people that he wants to join his crew, and maybe they're in bad family dynamics. Maybe they're in a town that's like completely shutting them out, or they're on the run from a villain, and they don't have anybody else to turn to. And there's always this element of, you're stuck in a bad situation, you deserve better, come with me, become part of my crew. And he'll fight off the oppressor. And a lot of times the people who he asks don't want to do it. They're like, no, I can't. I'm stuck here. I just can't do this. This isn't what I want to do. But the captain character sort of sticks around, and he'll fight off the oppressor until the person really learns to value themselves and really agrees that they deserve better and want to move forward, which I love. I love this so much, and it really hits the found family bullseye for me. Just this kind of um, very high level of companionship that they get from really delving into each other's history and being there, and like, like once they join the crew, that was it. They are there for life. They are they are family now. So So yeah, it really puts it in a special box. And they're all part of this pirate crew. There's other pirate crews in this series that are more based on a captain who is enslaving people or being mean or maybe not even that, but just like, yeah, these people are cool. I respect them. I'm gonna float around with them and try to get treasure or whatever. But that's kind of the anchor of One Piece, so to speak. So I really love those situations where a character can kind of bring that growth in to somebody else's life who doesn't know that they need it yet.
I think there's something really special with a crew or a team or some group that's like, basically put in a room or a ship together and told, okay, get along, everyone. And then they do more than that and thrive and become so close over time where it's just like you didn't necessarily choose these people, but you still found that bond. And I think there's something really special with that.
It's so true.
Yeah, that really kind of reminds me of Cast Off, which is a
Yeah.
really great webcomic. It really kind of is still developing the whole found family trope, honestly. But I really love where it is right now because when it starts out, the main character Vector kind of gets thrown in with the bounty hunter, and the two of them kind of go start on the adventure and whatnot. And as it goes along, you see them pick up the cartographer, and eventually, I think right about now, they're hitting the kind of I would do anything to protect the other two people and like our little trio kind of stride of found family. And I really love it because it hits the note of none of them have noticed it yet. I don't think any of them quite realize that they would like go so far to protect
Well,
Yes.
the
yeah,
other two
Ariana
people.
especially. I'm familiar with Cast Off, and
Oh, she's so
she's
grumpy.
such a grump, but you know in her heart of hearts.
Oh,
She has a heart of
the
gold.
moment that realization comes, it's going to be like candy.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for her to realize it because I think Star, if you ever hear this, don't take this as like you have to do this, but like, oh my god, I can only imagine that when she realizes it, she will just immediately go and like destroy anyone who's hurting Vector. I just feel like that's immediately her next choice. I can't wait to see her just kind of like take everyone down and like protect him.
I am waiting for that too. I would love to see it. I think another comic, since we're talking about web comics, that kind of reminded me of that is Soul to
We're talking
Call.
webcomic?
Yeah, I know. The weird.
Webcomics here? What?
Yeah. But Soul to Call is another great one. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic webcomic. And Rami really does a good job with Avril. She's this very grumpy, solitary person who's trying to find her father. She's kind of doing odd jobs, but she's this teenager who thinks she's got it all together, thinks she has all the answers. Yeah, she's cursing all the time and everything, and like, it's just but she's very solitary, and she meets Eli in a way that she's just like trying to use him. She's trying to use his powers, but she finds out that he really needs her protection and her street smarts instead. And they go on. They meet James. They meet Tiffany, and the four of them really form this cohesive unit where they really all know and respect each other's abilities, and also their shortcomings and when they need to take a break and when they need support. And it's just so beautiful. It's been a really incredible journey watching that all come together. So thank you, Rami, for bringing that wonderful comic to us. Hello this is Delphina with a little note about Meg's comic, My Illustrated Life. It explores the life of an artist with shenanigans from family, friends, and pets, and it should be very fun and relatable. You can catch up on the archives at Webtoons. Just search My Illustrated Life or follow her on Twitter for updates. Check it out and enjoy the episode. And yeah, what are some of the other themes or tropes which tend to come along for the ride in a found family story? We've talked a little bit about choosing your friends, true companions. What are those things?
Well, one extremely obvious one is the theme of the power of friendship. And in fact, it's so obvious that I'm going to move down to a very niche one that shows up from time to time in found family stories, which is the redemption arc for like an arc villain.
Ooh.
This is something that Avatar: The Last Airbender does, which is super fun. Oh yeah, skip to avoid Avatar spoilers. I'm trying to be as vague as I can, but probably everybody's seen it or heard about this bit at least. But the bit with Zuko, where he's been the villain for like 2 seasons, but over the course of interacting with the main character party, and just kind of seeing that like they have such a healthy dynamic and he has such a messed up like home life, which has led to him being at odds with these people, that like the turnaround where he ends up joining the main party is so solid, and it's like such a great like when you can put together a unit of characters in the story that have such a like fun dynamic with one another, and then you put somebody else who is in a similar position to where the other characters were at the beginning of the story, with like feeling alienated or like they're not finding that sense of belonging in their own life. They found it with each other. And then flash forward to later on, there's another character who's been on the outside and has maybe been fighting them for a while. And they come to realize that the dynamics of this group are something that actually they could find like healing and beneficial in some way. And it's not just Avatar that did this. It's also in the Fast and the Furious
That's beautiful.
franchise, otherwise known as the Found and Family franchise. There's so many movies where I'm sorry, I had to. There's so many movies where the villain of one movie will like join the family in the next one, and then they'll show up at the barbecue that's at the end of the movie, like hanging out with Dominic and the gang because they've seen the
Oh
value,
my gosh.
the power of family. They've been won over. That's how strong it is.
I don't know what else we have to talk about now that we've mentioned Fast and the Furious, but I don't know. Maybe we can think of some other things. Meg, what do you think? What are some other themes or tropes that kind of you associate with found family?
I'm gonna piggyback off the kind of magic of friendship thing, and of course, I'm going to go down the very obvious route here for a minute. And so sorry, but I'm going to talk about Milo Pudding. Yeah, no shame. Love it.
Do it.
Very good. I love the trope of magic is friendship. I'm going to talk about it now that we've brought it up. That's just like obviously the core of the latest kind of like series that they did with Twilight and the main six. That's like the whole thing, as finding that while yes, the unicorns have magic and can do things with
There's
their
no
magic,
shame in that. I
the
love
real
My Little
magic is
Pony.
actually friendship and all the like trials and tribulations and whatnot you can get through with it. And like that's one of my like favorite kind of side tropes off of Found Family, is just like friendship is so wonderful that you can like use that to get through stuff.
Yeah, and I think that like along with that, the whole magic of friendship, you see that the trope of friendship is magic and found family start intertwining and blurring some lines when it comes to a lot of magical girl comics and shows and things. Um, where like the gang, the power of their how tight knit they are starts influencing how powerful their magic is. Um, and I'm a sucker for that too, because then you can start getting to when the bond is
Yes.
infinitely strong. You can get some crazy insane power levels over 9,000. Um, um, and just using that like I'm gonna destroy you with my love for my friends. Pew. There's just something so cool about that.
There's also a corollary that I personally have a major weakness for. Any story where magic or power or like whatever mutant ability that they have is linked to their emotion in some way, which will automatically kind of connect it to their like their friendships and their dynamics with other characters. But just as the idea that like friendship can make your magic stronger. I also enjoy the stories where like maybe friendship is what calms the magic down if it's going out of control or something like that. I am
Ooh.
a sucker for those
Mm.
scenes. They're my favorite.
Yeah, the
Those are incredibly good.
yeah,
Those are the best thing ever.
you just like lose your control. I mean, the Hulk in Avengers or
Or like
whatever, just
Howl.
like oh
Literally
yeah.
every comic I ever
Yes.
make, every comic I have made and every comic I will make in the future is going to have that in it somewhere. I can't help myself.
I mean, you shouldn't, honestly.
What's interesting to me too is that like they a lot of those kinds of characters are valued for their power, but that is the thing that alienates them. And
Yes.
then the family component just brings them back and says you're not too far gone, you're not too overpowered, you're not like so weird and abnormal that that it won't affect you. So yeah, and speaking of like the power combinations and stuff like that, I I have a personal deep love for the Super Nintendo game Chrono Trigger. It is kind of old at this point, and the graphics are not beautiful, but I love how the more the characters get to know each other and the more like they actually cast spells together, how that's a mechanic in the game where yeah, now they have combination spells and combination powers and they learn to rely on each other and it's so good. I love that game. Um Also bringing it back to the world of webcomics, Court of Roses has a very good dynamic where they're a troupe of bards and they all come from different religions and different kinds of their powers come from different places, but they learn to kind of meld those together the more they get to know each other and the more they get to know each other's powers. So it is both like literally like a jam session between musicians and then also overlays this magic component to it. And it's so good. I
It
love it so
is, yeah.
much.
So what would you say is like something that doesn't fit Found Family?
Oh,
Because I think about this a lot.
yeah. I mean, I think like there's dad figures. I think there's a lot of dad figures in fiction that like yes, father son or mother daughter or whatever that is a form of family, but I don't know if that qualifies for family for me. For the found family dynamic, I really feel like I want them to be equals. I want a sibling like relationship that both people are entering into uh, on an equal ground, because otherwise it's just sort of well, you have to have me in your life because you need me because you're a minor or whatever, you're a baby I found on the doorstep. That's not really found family to me. And maybe that's more adopted family. I think it, I really want some kind of agency in both characters to say yes, this is the group I want.
Yeah, I totally agree. Found family for me also has to be more of like a sibling thing where maybe kind of around the same age, not necessarily like, the same age, but just something where they're on like the same kind of power level, rather than like an adult and a child.
I don't know. I feel like they all do fit the terms of found family in some sense. Like one of the I mean, one of the core models of it is that lone wolf and cub kind of subtype, where there's like the grizzled burly warrior who like suddenly has to like help out someone like smaller and weaker. I feel like those are still found family stories. When people in the current community of webcomic creators talk about it as something they're putting into their own work, or that they're seeking out in the work of others, they do tend to be looking for something a little bit different from that. More like what we've been talking about here, where it's more close to like a band of friends who will always have each other's back. But that doesn't mean that that's the only kind. Like, found family does not have to replicate the structure of a traditional nuclear family. It doesn't have to be, I found a new dad or a new mom or a new like baby or whatever. Uh, but that's not to say that if that is literally what's in the story, that is also still found family. It can be all of these things.
So you think it's more of a subset when you have like a parental figure or whatever.
Yeah,
Like that's a
absolutely.
subset of found family. Okay.
I think found family is big enough. Like, they are literally finding a family. Like,
Yeah, I definitely agree. Um, and I think the lines also, like, in a similar vein, the lines can start getting a little blurry once romantic interests start getting involved. Um, but I don't think that's necessarily rules out, any found family kind of dynamics. Um, it it certainly changes things. It makes things a little different, especially if it's like, just like two of the characters and not like, hey, join my band of friends. Also, we're one giant polycule. Um, I think it's like it definitely starts blurring the lines with some other tropes, um, and might start becoming less of a found family if there's still subsets within that core group that that are even a little closer, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you think of a developing romance or developing relationship like that, like you do have to like stop at the friends part first. So
Mm-hmm.
it does make sense when things move from one direction to another. I know Ace creators really kind of value, from an Arrow Ace perspective, that kind of um, uh, the platonic bonds that may or may not be like the nuclear family, as this thing was saying. Just like
Yeah.
you don't have to have like the perfect analog of yes, this is a younger sister, older sister dynamic or anything like that. There are so many ways to represent a dynamic. And I think it's just really cool to explore those. And, we were talking about friendship and whether friendship is a part of this. And yeah, it is, but w our language has kind of failed us in that, like, we use everything as friends, like, "Oh, that's your
Yeah.
friend," or whatever. So we're kind of taking the rules of family, we're taking the spirit of family and applying that. One of the things that I thought of, when I was trying to think of what doesn't count as found family, and I was thinking about Lord of the Rings, because you have the Fellowship of the Ring, and you have these characters who helped somebody on a quest, but you didn't see that emotional bond really happening. There was some emotions, and there were some things, but yeah, Frodo, it wasn't a great thing for Frodo. He really didn't like. He didn't really go and say, "Those were my friends. They sure helped me." Like he had friends to begin with, and they stuck with him, and that's pretty good. But yeah, it's kind of a weird one.
And then when the journey ends, he goes back to try and stay with the found family, and he finds he can't. He not only can't stay with the new friends that he made along the way, he can't even go back to the family that he had or the friends that he had. So I think that, like, while that gets brought up a lot, just because it's, giant band of people all banding together, and while during the adventure they may have all had each other's backs to varying degrees, sometimes literally, I have your back with a knife, stupid Boromir. Uh, but I
Oh.
think I definitely agree where I don't think that's found family. It has to have some kind of lasting impact.
The found family version of Lord of the Rings is the additional sequel where after that story ends, there's another subsequent story where they like meet up with one another again, or like Frodo finds a bunch of new people. Maybe he gets in the boat and he goes west and like he meets a bunch of cool people and finds a sense of belonging that he wasn't finding at home anymore. And then it's a found family story. But considering at the end of Lord of the Rings, like everybody just literally goes back to kind of their own home and is like, "All right, see you later, bye. I'll have you on I'll call you." That yeah, it doesn't quite fit.
I'll send the ravens.
I'm going to piggyback on that and just kind of reiterate. If you have found family that splits up after the whole adventure, big chaos thing is done, that's not found family anymore. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's the
That
worst.
Or it
irritates
was, but
me
now everybody's
so
mad.
badly. Because the whole point of found family is that they didn't choose anybody to be their family. But when they realize that they are family, they would do anything to protect them. And like I said earlier, it's a pillar in their life. If it's gone, they don't know what they would do without it. Their whole kind of structure falls down around them. If they all break up at the end, they're back to square one, if not even worse off, because the support system they realized they could actually find in the world has left them. Like, it just undoes so much, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just so irritating.
Yeah, hard agree because that is just because it devalues it at the end. It cheapens it. It says, okay, that happened. That was a season in my life that apparently didn't mean anything. And I guess to Lord of the Rings credit, it does really show that he can't be part of what he was, and so that was kind of like uh, we think of found family as okay, that's kind of an upper, but that was kind of the downside of like now you have no support, now you have nothing. You gave away everything to complete your mission, and yeah,
Yeah, I think I actually do. I think that when you say it that way, though, I think that in some ways, like, had things gone slightly differently, Lord of the Rings could very well be a found family thing. But I think that the whole aspect of the horrors of war, um, and the trauma of great loss like Frodo went through, and the great burden, I think those like outweigh any of the benefits that he would have had with the found family thing, where just those were just so strong. um and it's definitely like you can tell that like Tolkien wasn't really focusing on the found family aspect. It was focusing on, yeah, Frodo does have these people he can lean on, but he can't anymore, not without some sense of immense guilt or trauma. I think that's one way that like you can still do that in a story, but I think you have to be very careful when calling it a found family story then, because then it's really a
yeah,
story about other
Y-
things that has
yeah,
aspects of
yeah,
that.
because then it definitely, like Delphina said, just kind of cheapens the whole thing of found family. Everything they kind of went through suddenly means nothing anymore.
yeah. The relationship didn't endure whatever it was up against, whether that was like the horrors of war or something else. Yeah, I mean, there's a point to be made from that, but like using that that trope, I think a lot of people are trying to come to found family from it, they want something that fills that hole in their life. Yeah, that's such an excellent point. It's just so interesting thinking about like all the different ways these kinds of things overlay. So yeah, I think we're in a good place. Does anybody else have any final thoughts about what to do with found family? Any advice or anything of that nature for people who are writing a found family aspect of their webcomic?
Well, I mean, at least from my own personal experience, I think that if you're going to be writing a found family story, especially from a queer and trans angle, if you are a queer or trans person and have this experience, Um, as someone who's written the story with this, with some experiences, it's very good to be just keep checking in with yourself. You shouldn't be writing things that are like making you feel hurt still. I think it's always good to feel something when you're writing, but also like you should be careful to like manage your own, expectations in mental health and your own relationships, because there can be times where like you can still be too close to something that may be influencing your work, where you can still write about it, but just check in with yourself, be kind to yourself, and that'll show in your work. Um, so self empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me too, it's just trying to come up with the dynamic of the family, making sure you're treating it as its own sort of character and that it has its own sort of life. Because I think we take a lot of these relationships for granted. If you have characters in your head that you've been playing with all along, they already feel like a found family to you sometimes. But my advice would be to really show that on the page. I think there's a lot of times where people want the emotional payoff of a found family dynamic, but they don't really sell that to the reader sometimes. Um, and then people readers are confused, or readers aren't getting the emotional impact that you want. So show them big ways, small ways that they're interacting, that they're growing, that they're changing, and that can be a really powerful tool for you. Yeah, we've said so much, covered so much ground.
Yeah, covered so much, said so much, but it's all good stuff.
I feel like we've become family.
Aww.
You're my family too, Thorb.
A podcast is the friends you made along the way.
Oh my god, no way. The magic of friendship.
This is getting really sick and sweet, so I think we're going to cut it off here before we give all of our listeners cavities. So that wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for listening. I have been your host, Delphina, and you can check out my work at sombulus.com.
I'm Verathane, and you can check out my work at chiralt.sevensmith.net or at witchwoodcomic.com.
I'm Megan, or Meg, and you can check out both of my comics on Webtoons.
And I am Rennie, and you can check out my comic, which just relaunched, on kateblast.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Screen Tones. Please subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to also follow us on Twitter at ScreenTonesCast.